Okay. Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Cabinet. This is the first meeting since the death of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and therefore can I ask members to hold a minute's silence in memory of the Queen. Thank you. God save the King.
God save the King.
It is also with great sadness that I also inform the meeting of the death of Councillor Jean Stretton. As I said yesterday, Jean's death has come as a complete shock to us all. She was everything you wanted in a ward councillor and a cabinet member. And I think I speak for us all when I say Jean will be hugely missed, and our thoughts are with John and her family. Can I ask members to hold a minute's silence in remembrance of Councillor Jean Stretton? Thank you. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Moores. Urgent business, I haven't been notified of any urgent business. Declarations of interest. Does any member have an interest to declare on any matter on the agenda? No. Public question time. We've received no notification of public questions. Minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 22nd of August 2022. Minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on 22nd of August 2022. Does Cabinet agree the minutes of the meeting are circulated? Thank you. Item 6. Oldham's cost of living response, which is my agenda item. So this is absolutely crucial for us as a council and for all of our residents across the borough. When I became leader in May, I pledged that Oldham Council would do all we can to help people living in the most difficult of times and set out the cost of living crisis as one of my top priorities. Cost of living is already hitting Oldham as hard, and we're determined as a council and a leadership team to help all our residents as they face this challenge over the coming winter. In July, we held a cost of living summit to bring together residents, partner and voluntary organisations to plan for how we will collectively respond to this crisis. And 2 weeks ago today, Oldham Council declared a cost of living emergency. This report outlines the Council's response to the emergency and has been informed by our cost of living summit. We welcome any support that the government decide to bring forward, and I welcome the announcement today from the Business Secretary in relation to their energy cap on businesses, and whatever the Prime Minister announces on Friday in the financial package, we will also welcome that. But the reality is we cannot wait for the government. We have to be proactive and not reactive. We already see too many of our residents are already panicking about are they going to heat or are they going to eat over the next 6 months. This report outlines a proposal for a £3 million package to help reduce the impact of the increased cost of living on our residents and to widen the safety net as more people find themselves vulnerable to a financial crisis. People are worried about how they're going to cope over the winter. These people will turn to the council services for help, and we want them to do that as soon as possible to ensure we can help them before they reach crisis point. We don't want anyone having to choose between going cold or going hungry. This extra £3 million, which is one of the biggest investment packages we've seen for the cost of living across the country and certainly the highest in Greater Manchester, will have a huge impact on people's lives, providing practical support with things such as housing and energy costs, while also putting more money in people's pockets to help them stay afloat. We're already seeing high demand for our support services right across the council. By investing an extra £3 million into our services, we can get people back on the right track. This means that in the long term, we'll see less demand on our services. The more people know what help is available to them, the higher the chance they'll be able to avert crisis. We also know that in hard times, such as what we saw during the COVID pandemic, the number of serious incidents, including domestic violence and child neglect, rises. We need to act now to protect families and give people all the support and help they need. If we approve this paper today, we'll also launch a new publicity campaign, including leaflets delivered to every house across the borough to make sure everyone knows the range of support available to them and the potential benefits that they may be entitled to access. Today we have an opportunity to put more money into the pockets of our hard-working Oldhamers and help them as best we can through what we fear will be a very, very difficult winter. Does Cameron have any questions or comments on the proposal? Councillor Akhtar?
Thank you, Chair. Would like to, I welcome this report. I would like to personally thank you for bringing this report forward. And like you said, the government has actually dithered and delayed sort of making announcements in terms of how they're going to support citizens across the nation. And whereas here we're being proactive and come up with a scheme where we will support our most vulnerable residents across the borough to help them in these difficult times. And if we don't, like you said, we'll end up picking up those pieces in the future, and those end up costing us a lot more. And I personally would like to thank for all your hard work that you carried out during recess to bring this report forward.
Thank you, Councillor Akhtar. Councillor Jabbar?
Yeah, thanks, Leader, for this report and your introduction. I too welcome this report. I think it's very much needed. I've been talking to a lot of people in my ward and actually across Oldham who are really struggling. So this report is a welcome news, and I want to also thank you for taking leadership in this very difficult area and in a very difficult time to come up with this report and the proposal. I want to pick up on two particular issues, Chair. Firstly, the doubling of the Warm Homes Oldham programme. A lot of people benefit from this particular scheme. It's been recognised nationally what we do under this particular scheme, and doubling it means that more people can have access to replacing their old boilers, get insulation to their properties, get help with their energy costs, and this is absolutely timely, and I think it will make their heating system for people who have old heating system more efficient and hopefully save lots of money at a time when they need to save money when we see gas prices going up rapidly. Also, Chair, I'd like to raise the issue about the campaign. I know, talking to a lady, an elderly lady the other day, Chair, in my ward, she's got disability, but she's not aware of making claims for PIP or for care, although she gets actually care from her grandchild. And I think it's important to raise these issues with all our residents. So making sure that what council is offering, but also the state benefit that they may be entitled to, is making sure that we direct people to that and check that whether they are entitled to benefit. If they are, for some people, it could be literally hundreds of pounds coming in each month. And I'm very, very pleased that you included that in this programme. So thank you, Chair, for this report, and thank you for all the things that's been included in there. And final comment is, on Friday there will be the emergency budget. I just hope that the government and the new Prime Minister understands what's happening in places like Oldham and actually give us the additional resources that we need to make sure that we continue to provide key services and stand by the people, vulnerable people, when they need our help. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. Councillor Mushtaq?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I echo the comments of my colleagues and yourself. To answer Councillor Jabbar's question is they don't understand, the government doesn't understand what's happening in places like Oldham because they've already hinted at what they'll be doing, which is lifting the cap on bankers' bonuses, which is what was one of the contributing factors to the 2008 crash, because it incentivised them to bundle bad deals together and try and sell them. So I think we know where Friday's mini budget is heading, unfortunately, which is why this is all the more important, because we do need a local response. We are local government, we are a Labour administration, and that has to be reflected in any response, and it's reflected in this. The one thing I wanted to highlight is, and I think a lot of people know I'm a strong believer in the voluntary community faith and social enterprise, or VC, FSE sector, because this very often is the first port of call for those that are really struggling. It's not the council, it's not a statutory body, it's someone who's got a community cafe or a community organisation run by one of their neighbours, and we need to support those people. And very often they don't require multi-million-pound contracts to do a lot of really good work. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of the contributions that have been made in this proposal towards that sector, and I'd like to thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mushtaq. Councillor Brownridge?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for recognising that the cost of living crisis isn't just affecting people who are already at the bottom of the pile, but it's now seeping upwards to, you know, we've now got not doctors, but nurses and teachers going to food banks. So I think that this offers a level of hope for people who possibly wouldn't qualify through the benefit system, but do need that little bit of extra protection. So I really welcome that it's more wide-ranging, and it will be very much needed and very much welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all those comments, and I think what's really important for us is that we are proactive and not reactive to it. I think people have gotten to a false sense of security with regards to the energy bills, but that's because most of us haven't had our energy on for the past 3 months. But as we sit here today, that energy cap is nearly twice what it was 12 months ago, and is still going to rise because we're not at the height of that. And every single one of us, and I sit here and I'm worried about paying my nursery fees and my mortgage and my energy. And if people like me are worried, the whole of Oldham is worried. And we've got to ensure that we put this in place now, increase the helpline, increase the support we can give to ensure we avert as few people as possible tipping over into crisis. And it's so important that we do bring this forward. So thank you for all your comments. Does Cabinet agree with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 7 is Tommyfield Market and the lease management. So just to do some of the boring bit, before we get on to the meatier part of what this report is, in order to facilitate, obviously, Tommyfield Market eventually moving over to Spindles at the end of 2024, we need to ensure that we bring lease arrangements for the current traders at Tommyfield into place. Because there's been differing historical practices, there's a variety of types of tenancy agreements with different market businesses, all with a variety of expiry dates and break options. And therefore, this paper proposes new tenancy agreements with a provision for the agreements to be ended when the new market in Spindles is ready to be open. Now, everybody knows that we've got quite significant and very, very ambitious plans for the town centre, and particularly around the renovation of Spindles and what will be the new market at Spindles. We also know the value that Oldham has put on Tommyfield Market and, you know, the local attachment to that market as well. Now, our market traders have been absolutely hammered by COVID, first off. People have not gone back to the office the way that they have to. People's shopping has also changed as well, and they're still recovering from that. Then we combine that with a cost of living crisis, and we need to ensure we offer practical support to our market traders. We want to ensure that come the end of 2024, when they do move over to Spindles, they are in the best possible position. Now, I met with the market traders last week, with Councillor Akhtar as well, and what this paper proposes to do is to introduce a 50% rent reduction for market traders, as long as they're in compliance with their existing arrangements, and this will continue the 50% reduction until they move over into spindles. Now, it's fair to say it was a positive meeting. They were really receptive to it. You know, they're quite open about the challenges they've faced over the past couple of years, and what this does is puts money back into their pockets. It's, you know, beneficial to nobody for us to have a failing market or market traders that have to fall by the wayside because they can no longer afford the rent. So this is real, tangible help we are offering our businesses in Oldham. Does Cabinet have any questions or comment on that? We don't agree it now because there is a closed paper as well, but Councillor Akhtar?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo what you've already said in terms of, I mean, what this report shows is that this Labour administration is a caring administration, it's listening and it's acting upon the concerns that our business community, and in particular the market traders, have actually raised with us. Over the last sort of couple of years, they have been asking for financial support in terms of rent reduction, and here we've actually acted upon that and offered them a 50% reduction to ensure that our market traders are actually sustainable. Those businesses are sustainable when they move into spindles.
Thank you, Councillor Akhtar. Councillor Mushtaq?
Just to add on to that, great work by yourself and Councillor Akhtar, but there's always negative comments and publicity out there, and I think it's important to highlight that the proof is actually in the pudding. If you read the paper, it's not just a case of we want to keep the market, let's relocate. There's actual support behind this, so I think it's really important to highlight that, and I think we need to get that out as well, just to combat some of the negativity out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mushtaq. Of course it is. And do you know, if we say something's priority, at some point you have to put your money where your mouth is, don't you? It's the same with the cost of living package. We have to realign our resources and budget to actually focus on what our priorities are. And the market is a priority. What came out from me from that meeting, because it's easy to read some of the online stuff, isn't the negativity. And the market traders were really pleased about the 50% rent reduction. But what came most out of that meeting for me was their excitement to move over to spindles. Some of them are looking for bigger units once they move over to spindles, but nearly all of them were just like, we just want to move over now. You know, they recognise that building isn't fit for purpose anymore, and they also recognise that moving over to spindles opens them up, doesn't it? The potential for growth is significantly higher than the building they're in now. So they were really excited about that, which was really positive to hear as well, how they've bought into our vision. So if there's no more comments on that, then Cabinet will consider recommendations as detailed within the report at item 15 before we make a decision. Item 8 is Don't Trash Oldham campaign, the year-end review and the next steps. So I'll be taking this report. The report outlines the performance of Don't Trash Oldham as it reaches the end of year 1. Our teams have delivered a hugely successful campaign to clean up our streets. They've cleared 662 alleyways, removed 284 tonnes of waste off the streets, issued 381 fixed penalty notices, prosecuted 44 individuals, and had over 60,000 doorstep conversations with residents and cleaned up nearly 3,500 streets across the whole of Oldham. I think it's fair to say it's been the most positive, outward-facing campaign this council has run in quite some time. Given how popular it has been, in the budget meeting earlier this year, we agreed to fund this to the tune of another £1 million over the next 12 months. As I say, it has been a popular campaign with residents, and it's clear that we do need to push on though, because this isn't just about picking rubbish off the streets, but all the work that we've done now can't be lost. So the plan in this report does do this, ensure that the work that we've done isn't in vain. It focuses attention on the street cleaning teams where it's needed the most and targeted intervention, and it also delivers on making Oldham a cleaner and greener place to live, which is what our residents want and what they're telling us what they want to do, and which is what we're committed to do. And just lastly on this, because this should have been taken by Councillor Stretton, so just to pay tribute to the work that Councillor Stretton has done in that portfolio since she took on the neighbourhoods portfolio. In May, you know, she threw herself into it, and it's a lot of work, that portfolio. It's a big portfolio, and particularly with Don't Trash campaign being such a key political priority for us. a lot of this is down to the work that Councillor Stretton has done over the past 4 months, you know, so I just want to pay credit to her because I don't want to take the credit for that. That is, the vast majority has come from Councillor Stretton. So does Cabinet questions or comments? Councillor Mushtaq.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I keep pestering today. Just to say that this wasn't just a clean-up of the area. So in my own ward in Hathershaw, which was a major hotspot, we've created a Hathershaw community group on the back of this, and that's gone from strength to strength. They've even won an award, and I believe that the alley, I could be mistaken, on page 16 is in my ward. And residents are leading the work now on the back of Don't Trash Oldham campaign. They've adopted alleys. After this meeting, I'm going in to Hathershaw with the secretary of the group to do a door knock to expand what was a pilot phase project that we did with a number of the worst alleys. So just to stress that it wasn't simply go in, shift everything, disappear. You know, there's been some serious ongoing progress, and it's saved the council thousands. But like I said, we'll go and hopefully visit with yourselves and a few others, Hathershaw, at some point, and meet the group. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Councillor Mushtaq. Councillor Jabbar.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, I welcome this report. 3 points I'd like to make. Firstly, thank you for starting this. I think when you were the deputy leader responsible for neighbourhoods, you started the Don't Trash scheme. It's been a magnificent success. Oldham is a better place for that. And certainly I can say in Coldhurst, all the streets have been clean, and some of the examples that Councillor Mushtaq has given, I can give you at least 2 or 3 where that kind of impact has happened, and small groups have been formed where people are looking after their immediate neighbourhood. So thank you for that. I also want to thank Jean Stretton for the work she's done to take it to the next level. There's a lot of work, as you said, Chair, but Jean has really worked extremely hard, and she would have been extremely proud to present that report today. But she's no longer with us, and I want to pay my personal respect to her, but acknowledge what she's done in there. And then also, Chair, I think the officers led by Emma and her team, Glenn, Neil, Craig, Ian, and other people, they have worked so hard. I've been with the colleagues from Environmental Services when they come to my ward, and I've seen how hard they work. So I think, Chair, with your permission, I'd like to propose that we record our thanks to all of them, led by Emma, for the work they've done, and it will be really nice to show our appreciation. And then going forward, Chair, the final comment I've got to make on this report is I really welcome the proposal that we'll be looking at introducing food waste bags for households. I think for some households it's a real issue. They can't simply buy that. And I'm really delighted to record that on page 21 we're going to be introducing the free waste bags for our residents. Obviously there'll be a cost, but I think in recognizing that this will lead to a greater recycling than actually should pay for itself. So I think it's a wonderful proposal, Chair, and thank you for that, and thanks to officers for bringing that report. Thank you very much.
Councillor Brownridge.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the phase 2, if we like, which is focusing on behaviour change, because I think one of the most difficult things is where people take a pride in the neighbourhood and there's just one person who doesn't, and then people get really disheartened and the whole thing goes. So I think focusing on hotspots and education, because still a lot of it is ignorance, in fairness, that people still don't quite know what they try to do the right thing, they don't get it right. And again, focusing on landlords, making sure they provide the right bins and they're constantly kept when people's tenancies change. So I think that would be really, that's a really welcome focus to actually bring about that change, which will have a long-term beneficial effect. And we were just wondering, is there any way we could name this second phase after Jean? Could we recognise her by involving her legacy specifically somehow, perhaps? Just a thought.
Thanks for that. So just on that, Yeah, so I've had some tentative discussions about how we can recognise Councillor Stretton going forward. Not necessarily within this, but I think it is important to recognise, as a former leader of the council, serving cabinet member as well, and first female leader of the town, it's important that in due course we do, recognise her for the contributions she made to the town. So just pick up on a couple of points. Abdul's right in terms of, the hard work that has gone in by Emma's team over the past 12 months. Because the reality is, I can go to officers, and I went to officers over 12 months ago now and said, let's start Don't Trash Oldham, and I want you to do this, this and this, and it's a timetable or whatever. And I can say what I want, but the reality is, if officers don't buy into it and don't do it, then it doesn't happen, does it? And it is Glenn's team and Ian's team and Simon Shuttleworth's team with their doorstep engagement. Do you know, the work they have done over the past 12 months is absolutely immense. And I think mirrors some of the stuff that we did in COVID. You'd never think we could actually get there, but actually what we can achieve over 12 months is incredible. So all credit goes to the teams that have been involved in it, because it is huge. And then I suppose lastly, on around the comments that Councillor Jabbar, Mushtaq and Ramridge made as well, around this is about a legacy. And it's about fostering a sense of pride in your area. Do you know what I mean? Nobody wants to live in a dirty town, and nobody wants to go outside of their door to see litter or to see fly tippet. And we have a role to go and do that and pick that up and clear that up. But that's not all our role going forward. And it's about what we leave behind, the outdoor groups you spoke about and the play streets that we've seen in the alleyways. But also, over the past 12, 18 months, the number of new litter picking groups. And that shows you, doesn't it? And we'll see that in all of our wards. But that shows you, and it's, trickle-down economics does not work, with respect to what Liz Truss says, but, trickle-down pride in your area from picking up some litter, quite clearly it does work. Because that's the best thing about Don't Trash Oldham, is the fact that how our residents, off their own back, now go out litter picking every Sunday morning in certain parks or whatever it is they choose to do. But that's because we showed that leadership. And the council showed that leadership, and they started that, and they've been to be able to pick that up behind us and leave their legacy. And as we move into phase 2 of Don't Trash Oldham, that's what the focus has to be on, doesn't it? So thank you for your comments on that, really positive. Does council agree with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay. Item 9 is grant acceptance for the Mayor's Challenge Fund and the B Network crossings. The Council has secured additional funding for B Network crossings via the Mayor's Challenge Fund. There were 5 sites across Oldham that were earmarked some time ago. They've been successful, and TFGM and Oldham Council have identified as somewhere that will benefit from additional crossing facilities for pedestrians and cyclists. The value for the funding for these schemes is just over £650,000 and will enable us to deliver much needed cycling and walking infrastructure along key points of the B network that were identified as points of severance, which often lead to residents feeling they have no choice but to take their car, even on shorter journeys. And I think the B network is quite a key part of Greater Manchester Mayor's Andy Burnham's aspiration to have a fully integrated transport network, and that includes the £2 buses that we see at the moment, the trams, but also increasing our walking and cycling, moving people away from the cars into a more green way of travelling and getting people outdoors. So this is really significant for us. We've been speaking about it for the past couple of years, but I'm pleased that finally the money appears to be coming down to us, and work should start on site on each of the 5 areas in the coming months. Does Council have any questions or comments? No? Does Cabinet agree with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Item 10 is the Hackney carriage fare increase. So Hackney carriage fares have remained at the current level since they were last reviewed 10 years ago. This is despite increased costs for the drivers for the trade during the last decade, which includes licensing, fuel costs, maintaining and running a taxi. In setting the fares, we have a responsibility to balance the increase against the needs of the travelling public, and the proposals to do that. The trade representatives have shown their support for the relatively modest fare increase, and if Cabinet approves this report, then a public consultation will take place. As I say, it is a relatively modest fare increase. I think we recognise, again, taxi drivers were significantly affected during the pandemic, but given there hasn't been a proper review for for a decade, it was timely to do it. So, Cabinet got any questions or comments? No? Does Cabinet agree with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 11, The fair cost of care exercise and Living Foundation National Living Wage implementation. Councillor Bramridge.
Thank you, Chair. So there's two parts to this. So the first part is the fair cost of care exercise, which is a part of all the changes happening in adult social care. We have to produce this information, which is quite right, because clearly it's not in anybody's interest to not be paying enough to cover the cost of care, because that will not give us a reliable and sustainable number of outlets and facilities. Obviously, it's quite a complicated piece of work. So the purpose of this report is to ask that the final reports delegated to the Chief Officer in order that we can comply with the government's timescale. If we don't, because the comments have to be back by October, if we don't do that, if we wait for it to be approved specifically by Cabinet, we'll be out of time, and we're concerned that the government may respond by saying, well, you can't have any money then. So I think it's not in our interest not to abide by those timescales. The difficulty about this is we've no idea what it's going to tell us. We suspect we're going to demonstrate that we're in the lowest providers in Greater Manchester in terms of what we pay, which won't surprise anybody because of the demographics and financial situation of the town. So there is going to be a serious question about what it means in terms of funding and who's going to pay for it. And you'll be surprised to know the government's not given us any clue about that. There's a further issue that while it's confined specifically to those categories in paragraph 1.2, obviously if the payment for those types of housing goes up, that will percolate across to other providers inevitably. So I suppose my personal concern is that the government will turn around and say, well, you can fund it through council tax rises, which is going to be horrific, and doesn't do it. And the real concern is it doesn't deliver us long-term stability. And I think that's our biggest concern. Obviously, with the cost of living crisis and the increase in particularly in heating bills, a lot of our providers are already struggling. And that makes a huge problem for the town if we haven't got enough places to put people who need that care. So it's an important piece of work, and I think it's important that we do it, because we do need to make sure we are paying the going rate. But it raises probably more questions than it actually answers, I suspect. The second part is the Foundation National Living Wage. Now, you will recall that we committed to pay this already. Obviously, since then, the actual rate's gone up. So the position we're in is we're recommending that we pay the previous rate as we agreed from September this year. We will then review in April. So whilst it will go up, there's no requirement to implement that increase immediately. It's a 6-month grace period. So the advantage to that is we can review it in April. So then there'll be an annual upgrade at the beginning of the financial year, which actually makes more sense anyway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bramridge. And yeah, I agree, that does make sense. We did have a conversation, didn't we, back and forth, but yeah, it does make sense. I agree, we do need to carry out that exercise, but it will raise more questions than answers. But we do need to know where we fall on the scale of what we're paying our carers, and to ensure we continue to be competitive. But that will undoubtedly bring its challenges, predominantly from a financial perspective. Has Cabinet got any questions or comments?
I should just add, Chair, that obviously there's an increase of paying the existing national living wage, which is budgeted for already. And there is something in the budget for allowing for this to go up in the future. But as we don't know what it is, it may well not be enough. So there are going to be additional financial pressures as a result. So I should have made that clear.
No, that's fine. And I think we need to, even because we don't know what the increase is going to be at the moment, we need to get on to paying our carers the national living wage as it stands today, doesn't it? You know, those people need help and they deserve that pay rise. So we do need to agree to that, because they deserve that money. Does Cabinet agree with the recommendations? Thank you. Item 12, day services contracts provided by Age UK Oldham. Councillor Bramridge.
Yes, we're asking for a 12-month extension to this, because this is an ongoing piece of work looking at changing how we provide daycare facilities to make the system more sustainable and to really develop resilience of care users. Unfortunately, this piece of work was significantly delayed by COVID. So what we're asking for is for another 12 months to allow the thoughts that are in process, that there's proposals in line to give them time to be introduced, but with the main idea that daycare will, for non-statutory users, will not be provided by the council anymore. It'll be done by age concern, but not using council resources. That's the objective, to make the system more sustainable and residents more resilient. So that's in train, but we just need a further time. But I am very conscious that we need to monitor that this happens. We do not want to come back in 12 months' time and say, can we have a further extension? So there will be monitoring to make sure that these changes are actually taking place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from Cabinet? No? Oh, Cabinet will consider making the recommendations as detailed in the report, item 17. So don't need to make the decision now. Item 13, Property Management Programme Update. Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you, Chair. So this report deals with the corporate asset that we have and the repairs that's required to bring them up to standard, to make sure that they function in the way that we want to. It's a three-year programme. The report is asking for Cabinet to approve the budget required in accordance with the Council's contract procedure rules. There's a second part to this report, Chair, which is in item 16, which is going to be considered in closed. But I'm happy if colleagues got any question to ask in respect of the open report. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Okay, as Councillor Jabbar said, the recommendations will be detailed with item 16. So item 14 is exclusion of the press and public. Can I ask a member to move and a member to second that in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they contain exempt information?
Second.
Thank you.